With the release of chapter 16 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, I feel the story is about to take a massive turn. And that massive turn, as we all know, is a transition between arcs. So this chapter felt like a transition chapter more than anything. But it still gave us some vital information we can look forward on using to improve the overall foundation of the story. More information on the 3-year time skip and Boruto's training, the start of the Sunagakure rescue mission, and some interesting love drama. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the latest chapter review. Yeah, you know what I'm about to ask. These chapter reviews don't normally do as good as my analysis videos, mostly because there's a plethora of reviews on YouTube, so that's probably the most common video I do on this channel that you'll see on somebody else's. So if you can just leave a quick like so we can push this video out further in the YouTube algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. Now, without further ado, let's hop into this chapter review. Now, following the ending of chapter 15, it ended with Boruto and Kawaki talking about the 3-year time skip as well as Kawaki's secret untapped power. So going into chapter 16, I was prepared for some type of flashback of any kind, or something that might take a little attention off the main storyline, and that's exactly what happened. So even though the flashback really had nothing to do with Momoshiki directly, we still got to know a lot about Boruto's Otsutsuki powers, and more importantly, his own variant of the Flying Thunder God technique. So these videos are tricky because I don't want to explain too much about the ability, because eventually I plan to make an entire video on the subject alone, but essentially we can see Boruto and KASHIN Koji training in a wooded area, and Koji is explaining to Boruto the basic fundamentals of space-time ninjutsu, especially his own that he masters in the future. He refers back to the time where Boruto manifested his own time-space ninjutsu, 3 times where he manifested this space-time ninjutsu from his karma, but all 3 times were flukes. Boruto doesn't actually learn how to completely control his power until 6 years after this scene. So if he's about 13 to 14 years old during this moment, then when he finally masters control over his karma, he'll be around 19-20 years old. So Koji's job is to effectively analyze the mind of 20-year-old Boruto to see how he figured out how to master these techniques in the time that he did. And without having any prior knowledge on FTG or Minato, he coincidentally created a technique that was very, and I mean extremely similar to FTG, as a way for him to control space-time ninjutsu. So as I explained before, instead of Boruto going through unnecessary trial and error to learn this technique, Koji just told him what conclusion future Boruto came up with. And in regards to this technique here, he came to the conclusion that metal is the most suitable medium for marking chakra. So shuriken, kunai, even his own sword. So he then went on to explain the details on how his flying RAIJIN works differently in comparison to Minato's. The main difference is the teleportation method. Boruto has to visualize and sense the ninja tool that he wants to teleport to. So future Boruto, and I know I'm calling him future Boruto, but when I say future Boruto, I mean the Boruto in the original timeline, I guess. The timeline where Koji isn't really involved. So future Boruto decided this would be easier if he used shapes instead of shuriken to travel long distances. And we've seen him do this multiple times throughout the duration of 2 Blue Vortex already. This is why we see Koji's toads carry these shapes around, which is much easier to visualize than any regular old shuriken. When the training flashback ends, we then transition back to Koji and Boruto's discussion about the future, the 10 tails, and one of my favorite discussions to talk about, timelines. The main point of this conversation was, now that Boruto and Koji know about the upcoming threat, they are now considered the fated point of singularity. And it's better that the information they know stays relatively a secret, meaning some people may know, but only very specific people like Kawaki, Konohamaru, Shikamaru, and the elders at Konoha. So Ada watched this past conversation over with her Senrigan so her along with Sarada and Sumire could possibly get some new information on what's going on in the present day. So yes, she also knows about the dangers that the future holds. And like Koji said, the more people that know about the future, the more we're strayed away from the rail of fate. They don't know if the future that will be born from people knowing this would be good or bad. So it's better if they just keep as many people in the dark about this as possible. So concluding this conversation, it surprisingly ties into the next point of interest as we switch back to real time. During Ada, Sarada, and Sumire's conversation, things got kind of heated. While Sarada was getting frustrated with Boruto for keeping them in the dark about the future, seemingly trying to bear everything on his own. So as Sarada tries to reject this way of thinking from Boruto, Sumire steps in and defends Boruto, explaining that maybe there's something that he wants to tell them but can't. They're all Boruto's public allies, but they don't know certain vital information regarding him. So she suggested it would be better for them to stay put and not try to follow Boruto. Just let him do his work from the shadows. They go back and forth because they both believe they have a point in their logic, and while I would agree that they both made some valid points, I would say Sumire is looking at the situation from a very emotional standpoint, while Sarada is being more logical in the situation. I agree with Sarada when she said that if they didn't assist Boruto, he probably would have had a much harder time fighting Hidari and probably would have died in the process by Jura. So there's definitely some good in trying to help, but there could also be some bad that stems from it too. But by the slim chance that involving the ones he loves could actively be harming them in the process, Boruto feels it's best to keep this business on the down low and try not to involve those like Sarada and Sumire. So just thinking off that, Sumire does have a point in her logic as well. You see what I'm doing here? I'm trying to stay as neutral as possible in this situation because I know how many Boruto plus Sumire fans there are, as well as Boruto plus Sarada fans, and they can get kind of crazy when it comes to their shipping in Boruto. I get it, I understand the passion in that. So I'm not gonna say exactly what I think about this little love triangle they got going on, for right now anyway. If I say something, it'll definitely be in stream when I react to the leaks. And speaking of stream, I appreciate everyone, and I mean everyone who stopped by the stream the other day. We capped at around 400 live viewers, so I definitely feel the need to go live at least one time every month so I could chat with y'all a little bit. But getting back on track, Sumire gets a little emotional about Boruto and tells Sarada that she didn't really take into account how Boruto feels about the situation. More or less, she just jumped to conclusions that he was hiding something and trying to take on everything alone. Sumire then refers back to the end of chapter 5 when Sarada hugged Boruto right in front of her. She referenced this not only as sort of like a confession for her love for Boruto, but she also used it as an example of how Sarada really doesn't understand people's feelings as well as she thinks she does. Even though this was by far, and I mean by far, the least important part of the chapter, you have to admit it was probably one of the most entertaining. Us guys, we do enjoy little girl drama sometimes. If you say you don't, you're just lying. So after Sumire finally spills her heart out, she runs out in a fit of frustration and confusion. Later on, we get a little glimpse of the village elders and the daimyo of the Land of Fire. They discuss that since Boruto has escaped not once, but probably twice now, he's giving them one more opportunity to catch Boruto and end his life. And if they can't do that, they'll send someone after him who can do the job, as he explains. So that's definitely something interesting to look out for in the future, and I also plan to make an interesting video on that too. The fact that Boruto could be chased after by some sort of assassin is insane, and a pretty fun concept to imagine. So I'll be on the lookout for that. That's definitely going to be very important in the future. So as we tune back into Ada and the others, we see Shikamaru talking to Ada with some questions regarding what's going on in Sunagakure. And since she's able to see what's happening in the Land of Wind, then overall she's one of the most important and useful allies to Konoha right now. So Ada tells Shikamaru that it's just as he foresaw. Since Shiki got attacked by the Claw Grimes and turned into a tree, a new Shinju appeared, a Shinju called Ryu, and his target is the Kazekage. So they need to hurry and send out a squadron to the Land of Wind to help out on the situation. Through more discussion about the Shinju situation and Boruto's secret involvements with Konoha, Kashin Koji Toad pops out and warns Shikamaru about the dangers of the Shinju and especially Jura. And what do we have here? More Jura statements. More Jura statements, not enough feats. But the difference is, this statement that says Konoha's chances of defeating him if they were to get in his way wouldn't be 1 in a million. I mean, to me that kind of confirms he's most likely the strongest villain the Naruto series has ever seen. Or if you're still skeptical about that, you could say he's very close to it. He's definitely up there with Ten Tails Madara when it comes to his presence, or as many people like to say these days, his aura. So he tells Shikamaru to send only Sarada, Mitsuki, and Konohamaru to the Land of Wind for a reason that'll probably be chalked up to a vision he had of the future. But under one condition, that he does not send Himawari out of the village. Since Jura is after her, her chances of survival out of the village would be close to zero. Since Jura views Konoha's culture to be something of high value, he's reluctant to do battle inside of the village. So as long as she remains in the village, everything should be fine. So finally, cutting from that very important conversation, we finally get a glimpse of what's to be the beginning of the Sunagakure rescue mission. With exactly as KASHIN KOJI requested, Konohamaru, Mitsuki, and Sarada on the site. It looks like this lineup would produce the best possible outcome of the future, and anyone else would likely end in disappointment according to Koji's logic. So they all link up with the Sand Shinobi, Yodo, and Arya for the mission, and as they're casually talking, they spot both Ryu and Matsuri in the distance looking at some sort of dead toad, as they feel this toad is a clue that'll lead them closer to Boruto and KASHIN KOJI's whereabouts. And that's the end of the chapter. So as we wrap up this chapter review, let me know how you guys enjoyed reading this new chapter this month. A lot of new interesting turn of events and plot devices to set up even more exciting narratives and events in the future as well. I know many people felt like this chapter was relatively slow, so go ahead and rate this chapter 1 out of 10, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best. And like always, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like this from this channel, then I would appreciate it if you would drop a like on the video, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you get notified when I upload or go live for chapter spoilers. And without further ado, I'm gonna catch y'all boys and girls on my next one, and I'm out. Peace.